I'm making a move. Study long, study wrong. Ain't nothing gonna happen on its own. I'm making a move. Don't need no hinges for this song. I got joy all through my soul. I'm making a move.
Broker Breakdown starts now.
Mr. Sun is shining.
Ben, you're going to be working with dozens of listings only, not even any buyers this year. And you started a team about 6 months ago that is one of the top in Michigan already. So let's start there. There's lots to unpack, but why did you decide to start a real estate team from scratch during a pandemic?
Yeah, Nick, thanks. A lot of reasons, really. So during the pandemic, I was kind of moseying along and I was doing my thing, selling the listings, and there was just, let me take it back. So going way back, I started selling real estate in 2006. I was the short sale guy in the area for 2010, 11, 12. And I really hit my stride during those years by finding that niche. And then I started to build a team, and I did so between 2013 to 2017. And we had a pretty good team. I was a broker owner as well at that point. And so I had really built something that I thought was pretty good and was doing very well, and I felt like I had reached this pinnacle of success in my life. And in 2015, I suffered a pretty tragic loss, and I went down a path of alcohol and drugs. And by the end of 2017, it was all gone. It was all gone. So in early 2018, I was 30-day inpatient rehab for alcohol and drugs, legal problems, divorce, folding 2 businesses that I had built, and had reached a pretty decent level of success, down to the point where it was that my car got repossessed, and so that was early on in 2018. Now, so at that point in time, I felt like I really needed to make a decision. There was a lot of things that happened, and I could choose to either sit on the sidelines and dwell on it all, or I could choose to move forward and build something great again. So it was actually, the timing of the pandemic, that was just me kind of climbing the ladder again, to be honest. Between 14 and 17, I stopped selling because I was running another business on the side, and I was running the brokerage and the team. So essentially in 2018, I started off as a new agent because my SOI at that point was, they were gone. And a lot of people had honestly, they had lost faith in me. So in 2018, I closed 6 houses, and I was closing 100 or 100 more in previous years, just a few years prior to.
Right.
So I went from around 100 houses closed to 6 in 2018, and it was just, and then so I had just again clawed. I'm clawing my way up. I'm clawing my way up, and after the pandemic. I actually rallied during the pandemic, so I felt like I had a good amount of business or enough business to go down that route again, that team route again. And luckily, I had built some great relationships. I focus on listings, so I was referring all of my buyers to a brilliant agent, and she wasn't part of my team, but we just had an ongoing referral agreement. And so she just kind of, this past August, so August of 2021, we're talking admin comes on, first agent comes on. And so that was the path pretty much. And here we stand today. It's April, and we're at 9 agents and 2 full-time ops.
Wow. Impressive. Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on the redemption arc coming. Well, it sounds like pretty much full circle at this point. So that's pretty exciting.
That's where we are. Yeah, I'm back to where I was in 2014, 15, 16, but looking to grow it much better than it was before the second go around.
Right, yeah, building it the right way. That's certainly a lesson learned. It sounds like. So, well, there's a lot to unpack there, right? Because there's a whole bunch of sort of layers we could get into that I think would be really helpful for our viewers. The first I want to ask you about is, so you have the experience and you've run a team of people before, and so what I want to ask you about is sort of this moment where you realized it was time to add team members, right? So you were working on your own, rebuilding. I mean, essentially from scratch there, rebuilding your sphere, all that good stuff. And it sounds like to you it was fairly clear. Okay, this is the time to hire that admin, or this is the time to maybe officially partner with this buyer agent. I think a lot of agents, when they think about starting a team, it's just sort of this ambiguous goal, right? It's like, oh, I want to start a team. Eventually, I'm going to add some people, but how do I know when, right? And then some others I feel sometimes kind of go way farther than they should before they should have hired an admin, and here they are scrambling trying to handle too much. So how did you give us some advice maybe on sort of how to sense when that moment has arrived, and is there anything that you should be doing along the way to prepare for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, I see a lot of new team leads that I think are starting way too soon. I mean, if you're
Hmm.
not a predominant listing agent and you don't have enough listings to really leverage to feed those agents on your team, I mean, you can buy leads, but those sign calls and the open house leads, like those are gold for these buyers agents. So, I would say when you stretched your bandwidth, probably listing at least a minimum of 30 a year. Um, and
Hmm.
then when you feel like you're working 80 hours a week, and that's like I said, you've reached your bandwidth at that point. So that first hire should be an admin. It should not be a buyer's agent. And that admin
Okay.
you should get that kind of on point first, and then consider your first buyer's agent. That would be my
Gotcha.
advice. Yeah,
Okay.
I see a lot of people do it backwards, where their first hire is a
Hmm.
buyer's agent, but they've got no support, and so they're doing a ton of administrative tasks that could be done for $12 or $14 an hour, and so they're really
Hmm.
devaluing their own time at that point, or their own worth hourly rate at that time. So I see those are some of the
Right.
common mistakes that I really see in this industry. Um,
Interesting. Yeah. Well, so let's think about that admin a little more here. So obviously, you get to this point, you're supposed to be focused on listings, and I want to come back to that. I want to figure out, how do we get to 30 listings? I think that's a question a lot of people would probably have. But when you're at that point, you're ready to get this admin started. First of all, I 100% agree. I think a lot of people do what are simple tasks because they can do them, right? But they don't think about their sort of dollar per hour value. There's a lot of those things they could be getting off their plate. So, what are you looking for in an admin, right? So you're getting to that point, you're getting to that 30 listing mark. You're about to hire somebody. What are some of the qualities or past experience that somebody should look for when they hire an admin?
Definitely, I'm really big so I also have a degree in psychology, so I'm really big into personality profiles. So I would definitely run that DISC profile and make sure that they're in that SC
Okay.
category, and definitely not too high in that D category or the I category for that matter. So you really want to land in that SC. So that would be number one. Make sure that they're extremely coachable, because they're going to be an extension of you, basically like your right hand at that point, right? So all the listings that you're entering and the signs that you're ordering and the photos that you're ordering and all these mundane tasks that really could be done by someone else so that you could do the income producing activities, the transaction coordination. So that's where I would go with it
Mhm.
first. I mean, so my first admin,
Okay.
she started handling all my social. I don't touch social anymore. I'm just not good at it. And I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it, but it's not a passion of mine. And honestly, she yells at
Right.
me if I touch it because I mess it up somehow. Every single time. I don't know how. Totally Instagram illiterate. But you really need to figure out what is what are you worth, the dollar per hour ratio. So if you're worth $300 per hour, why are you doing all this stuff that you could hire out for 12,
Mhm.
14, 18, even $18 an hour. It just doesn't make sense because if you're worth 300 an hour, you
Right.
know, take get 20 hours a week of your life back and how much more money can you make? I mean, they more than pay for themselves if you do it correctly.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, and that's a question I'd also sort of follow up with on here is if we can do it in a sort of simple manner, what's the easiest way to at least ballpark kind of what your hours are worth? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. Is I don't know what my time's worth. I've never done the math. So do you have just maybe in like a 1 minute
Yeah,
summary of if
yeah.
it's an elaborate
It
process, we won't
it
go through it, but just to get kind of an
Sure,
idea.
yeah, it's a very simple equation actually. Take all your numbers, your GCI from last year. So this is pre-tax and divide it by the number of hours that you think that you worked that year. So for 2021, if I was averaging 60 hours a week, I worked, roughly 3,000 hours. And if I grossed 300,000, what am I worth per hour? $100 an hour, right? Yeah,
Right.
I did that
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That one's pretty simple. We can do that math
that's the
live.
math. That's the math. So
Yeah, that's easy. Right. Well, that's simple. And I think that's where I think most people, if they did that math, might be surprised at realizing, okay, maybe my time is worth more than I thought. And I think also it's worth keeping in mind, that's factoring in all the admin tasks you're currently doing. So
yeah,
when you do hire that out, your average dollar per hour goes way up because now your time is completely dedicated to those things that are much more impactful to the bottom line, like building relationships and doing your marketing and all that good stuff. So, well, cool. So that seems, it seems like a pretty easy process to go through to kind of figure out when to hire that person. So let's kind of flip back to a few minutes ago. We were talking about the listings, right? Because I think that's a lot of
yeah,
folks, that's going to be the first
yeah.
step here is if I'm an individual agent, I'm going to know how do I get to those 30 listings, or if I'm a broker or a team lead, how do I get my agents to get to those 30 listings and be able to start building their own team? Any suggestions there? And I know that's a Pandora's box. There's a million things we could do, but maybe sort of what are the things that have worked for you over the years to get in front of people or think about listing
Yeah,
their
the first
home?
thing that you want to do is change your language. So everyone that you're talking to on the phone, you're what instead of you're speaking to them as if they're selling their home. And even I went so far as to
Okay.
change my biography on everything on the internet and made it all so I was speaking to the seller. I'm not speaking to buyers
Hmm.
anymore. So on every single website, you'll see I'm talking to sellers. I'm not talking to buyers anymore. But there's a lot of things like we've had really good luck with Google LSA is crushing right now. Um,
Okay.
we're we're doing 4 client events per year and religiously and we're getting a ton of referrals from doing that. Even monthly
Hmm.
postcards to past clients in SOI. Just I and I'm guilty of this, so it's just that we spend so much money on lead gen and then take the people that know, like, and trust us and kind of push them off to the side. And so I've made it a
Hmm.
point in my personal business to really take the people that know, like, and trust me and give them the attention that they deserve. And it's worked out and it's paid off in huge dividends for me. So LSA, just speaking to people differently, offering value, from who could benefit from a market analysis, who could benefit from a maximum home value assessment where we just tell you, give you staging ideas. So it's all just coming from
Hmm.
value. And of course, there's great lead sources. Um, we buy a ton of leads that are cash offer based, and we're pretty good at converting those. Yeah,
Oh,
and that's where. So in 2018, 19, 20, that's how I kind of built my business was a lot of cash offer leads, and getting those listings.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, just focusing on those cash off, and there's a variety of sources for them.
Very cool. Well, I want to. There's a few parts to that are worth probably exploring further. I do want to ask about. I think that so. You study psychology, so you obviously know all these things, and I think psychology is fascinating and plays obviously a huge part in business. So when you made that shift, right? So you go onto your social and you're changing the language and you're sort of appealing specifically to sellers. I feel like that is the kind of thing that scares a lot of agents, right? It's sort of this intimidation of, well, if I make that shift, am I going to scare away a bunch of people that were thinking about hiring me and then be left with no business, even if that shift would pay off over time? So just walk us through that moment, right? So you go out and you make this shift. I mean, what happened? Was there any sort of immediate benefits or negative impact? And then what did that do over the next 6 to 12 months
No,
for
I
you?
mean, I think for me it wasn't scary. Buyers are they're easy to come by. I mean, buyers aren't paying the commission. The seller's paying both sides, right? So uh, it's
Hmm.
much more difficult, I think, to close a seller as opposed to a buyer. I think buyers, um, like I said, they're not paying the commission. So to them, it's nothing. But so if you speak to seller, like you just said, I think you have to make a decision to go one way or another, um, and commit. I don't know. Maybe it was easier for me because I was the short sale guy back in the day, so I had already had a ton of experience
Hmm.
with sellers, and so maybe for me it wasn't a huge leap of faith. I guess I haven't considered it for someone that wouldn't be in that position. But I don't think you'd be leaving business on the table if you focused on sellers.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, and that's the difference for the seller, right? I mean, if you're out there looking at websites and deciding what agent to hire, and one of them is speaking directly to you and the rest are
Yeah,
not, it's pretty obvious you're going to be a lot more likely to work with that agent, right? So that makes a lot of sense. So let's look at the other sort of side here, which is you're doing a lot of proactive things to stay in front of people that you've done business with in the past, or maybe even just people that are sort of part of your sphere of influence. I want to talk about the client events for a second because that is one that I've heard come up with a lot of the top agents that I've interviewed over time, and it seems like that can be a sort of super impactful opportunity. So you said you do
yeah.
4 a year, so that's one a quarter. Doesn't sound like too much to handle. What does it look like? I mean, how many people are coming to these? How are you promoting them? What should somebody expect if they start doing it? Because I do think planning an event can be sort of an intimidating step to take. So, what have you seen
Yeah,
from
definitely
doing
good
that?
question. So they don't have to be all, we throw this huge event and everybody comes and we have to get catering. And so our upcoming event
Right.
right now, we're just getting Mother's Day bouquets for everyone. And we're gonna
Hmm.
it's a reverse pop by, so they're gonna stop by our office and pick up free flowers for Mother's Day, and then we're gonna drop off quite a few as
Hmm.
well for some of our elderly people. So all we had to do for the planning was line up the flowers. We're all sitting in the office together, putting the bouquets together. So the budget was pretty low, and it wasn't a ton of work. Our first quarter event was actually a blanket drive. And so that was just, we all collectively raised as many because it was super cold in Michigan. And so I think we raised, I think
Yeah.
maybe a couple hundred blankets for the Humane Society. And so it was really just coming together
Wow.
as a community, and there wasn't a whole lot of planning with that one either. Now our Q3 event will be a baseball game, and that will require a lot more. But um, yeah, it doesn't have to be. I think when people think
Yeah, and
client
that's
events, I think people or agents think, oh my gosh, now I have to get a venue, I have to get food, I have to get entertainment or whatever. And those do require a lot of work, but really it's just I think client event is let's come together as a community. For me,
hmm
it's how can I give back to my past clients, and it's how can I keep them engaged with my community, and that again, it doesn't have to be an on-site
right.
actual event or party or anything like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I love sort of the simplicity of several of those. I mean, even the baseball game, that's obviously planning, but baseball stadiums cater to that kind
Yeah.
of experience, right? So it's not that hard to call up and buy your batch of tickets and all sit in the same section. It's always a lot of fun. So there's four of these a year, right? So you're doing four of these events. That's four touches with the people who do participate, obviously. So it's kind of what's the point? What's the benefit of doing that? So maybe kind of give us an idea of before you did events and then maybe after. If I was to commit to doing this for, let's say, a year and doing 4 events over 4 quarters, what should I be looking for to tell me if this is having the impact
Yeah, so
I want it to or not?
we've got a whole long checklist. So the exposure, the touches actually start 2 months before the event. So it's not four
Okay.
touches for the year. It's 10 times 4 times 4. So it's
Okay.
160 touches a year for those past clients. So, I mean, they're just seeing that, we're reaching out to them for things that are not real estate related, that we are human beings, that
Mm,
we're doing things for our community, like the blanket drive. It's just an opportunity to celebrate them with the Mother's Day flowers. And then at the baseball game, a chance to have fun and do things like that. But the point is to really stay front and center with people that know, like, and trust us. How do we do that without inundating them with real estate, real estate, real estate, real estate? So the solution is, offer
mm.
them something that keeps them in our community that's not real estate all the time.
Interesting. Okay. So that, and I love that point. I mean, that's obviously something we preach in the school quite a bit, but I think a lot of agents, they just have trouble with that. They sort of feel like I have to be reminding people I'm a real estate agent at all times. So can you give us, I mean, it helps to have kind of some examples, some real life, play by play, so to speak. So if I do these events for somebody, right, I'm not trying to bother them about real estate. I'm not constantly saying, hey, call me if you need to sell. Why does that still result in real estate business? You know what I mean? Like, so if we're going to go in that direction, we got to have some faith there that we're still going to get the calls for real estate and we're going to get more of them as a result. So why do you think that is so
Yeah,
effective
like I
at
said, the,
that
the
front?
bulk of the people we've already sold a house to, or we've sold a house for them. So they know what we do and they know that we're good at
Mm,
it. And so really it's just a matter of, people get busy in their lives, and you could be their favorite realtor on the whole entire planet, but if they haven't heard from you in some capacity in the last 6 months, you're not a thought for them, unfortunately. It is what it is. It's not, anything against you, but if you're not constantly staying in front of them, then you're missing a huge opportunity. And with these events too, there's all the social media stuff during the event, after the event. There's the touches after the event too, with, we raised this many for the blanket drive. It was, we raised this many blankets, and we all came together as a group. And again, for me, it's how can I, like, we have a VIP Facebook group, so it's closed group, it's only for our past clients. And so we're kind of trying to create a community in that too. And for me, it's just about bringing them into, like a, a for lack of, I keep saying community, but I want them a part of my community. You know what I mean? Like, I
right.
want to bring them into things.
No, I mean that makes total sense, right? Because the more you can build a sense of community amongst your former customers, the more likely they are to appreciate that and then want to grow that community, right? Which means they got to
Yeah.
go help you find more customers to help grow that community. So I love that, and honestly, I mean, yeah, that's another. It's interesting you bring up the Facebook group because that's another best practice. That's another thing I've heard from a lot of the top performers is keep your people together. Make sure they get to know each other as much as possible and it honestly it just makes the events that much
Yeah.
more enjoyable, right? If you show up and you know some of the people and you're talking about where Ben sold your house versus whatever it was, right? That's a great way to continue to encourage people to help, right? Which is really the if you can get to the point where your clients are helping you find more clients, you're probably in pretty good shape as
Really.
a
And I think
business,
too, I
right?
think, our society is so divided right now. So if we offer up a
Mm,
community or a tribe or something to be a part of or belong to, I think people are craving that right now, honestly, in a society that's so divided.
yeah, great point.
So that I think that, it's good all around. I mean, it's even more than the business. It's good to just, offer something like that to people.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I think we always start from the aspect of how do I make more money off of this? But there's a lot to, like honestly, it's like a lot of people are self-employed. It's like, the quality of your job, you get to determine the quality of your job and the experience you have. And the more you can make it a social, enjoyable, positive oriented thing that isn't about just getting the next sale at all times, probably the more you'll like it, So I think we
I think the
overlook
next
that a
sale
lot too,
comes if
right?
if your passion is there. I know for me, like I just wanted to
Right.
build something great. I wanted to build something where other people prosper, and even for my clients with selling real estate, I just wanted to um, do the very best thing that I could do for them. And I tell you, if you stop focusing on the ROI, it just comes. And I'm just like I'm a pretty passionate person in general.
Hmm.
But I think people can see that passion for real estate and for wanting to help them, and that kind of carries the whole thing. I think for me, I think that's been probably something that I haven't had to work at, but something that has kind of carried me through and helped me throughout the last 16, 17 years in this business.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, so what's next for you here, Ben? I mean, as you continue growing, I mean, it sounds like, getting this new team started, off to a very impressive start in just the first few months even. So what are some of your goals over the next couple of years? Are you aiming to sort of continue growing the team? Is there sort of a size that you want to end up at that's sort of ideal for you?
Yeah,
What are your thoughts there?
it's interesting that you asked that question. So the ultimate goal for me is keep the team kind of lean and mean at ideally around 10 to
Hmm.
15, that where everybody produces. Our culture here is we're all very hardworking individuals and very driven. So I'm not just bringing people on just to fill slots. Um, so yeah, I would love it to be kind of in that 10 to 15 range. For me, eventually be out of production. I'd love to write a book. I'm coaching nationally right now, doing speaking engagements nationally right now, and
Right.
would love to book more speaking engagements and take on more coaching clients and get that book done, and really be able to mentor and coach from a higher level eventually, where I'm helping
Love it.
people,
Yeah.
outside of my 15-person team.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah, and it makes sense to build your team to facilitate that, right? So sort of a very specific approach and style that makes that possible, which I think is very
Yeah.
intentional, which is nice, right? Well, so along those lines, I mean, if I was listening to this and I felt like I'd use some help in my real estate business, I'd probably want to know how to hire you as a coach after this conversation. So we'll give you a couple seconds to plug yourself. I guess we'll go over both, but we'll start with the coaching first. How does somebody get in touch with you on that front?
From the coaching standpoint, I'm actually a coach with Club Wealth, so you could reach out to clubwealth.com and request me personally. If you're in the Metro Detroit area, I love to talk about real estate. I love to help people. If
Very
you
good.
want to chat with me about joining my team specifically, I'd love the opportunity to do that. But if you just want a couple tips, I'm pretty open with my time and wanting to help other people.
All right, love it. Well, we are pretty much out of time, so I think we're going to get things wrapped up at this point. But Ben, and you did tell us obviously how to get in touch with you. I was going to ask, if you want to join Ben's team, right? What's the way to do that? But it sounds like, uh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. As far as joining my team, and you can find us on Lang Estates is the brand in the Metro Detroit area. So if you go to Facebook and search Lang Estates, Instagram, YouTube, you'll find us. And obviously Google. You'll find ways to get in contact with us. Our website is langestates.com.
All right, very cool. Well, yeah, there you go. If you need to get on Ben's team, or if you need a good coach, somebody you'd like to work with, you got a couple options there. Well, that's all we have for you today. I want to thank you for tuning in, joining us for this episode of Broker Breakdown. Ben, fascinating conversation, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Broker Breakdown. Talk to you then.